All right, so this is 160, the CISM class, and we're bound to starting Chapter 3, Information Risk Management. Sandy Barger, still National Archives. Oh, I didn't know that and got a slap on the wrist. Yeah. I don't know what they're really going to do about that misappropriating top secret documents. From what I hear, it's possible that they'll prosecute like some clerk or something, but probably not Trump. Anyway, so here it is. Let's take a look at this stuff. All right. So the issue here is risk management and implementing a risk management program. And more about it next time. All right. So this is 30% of the CISM exam. And this is the point where you have to balance business opportunity with the risks. And the main lesson here is one I mentioned before. In the early days, security professionals just thought they could say no all the time and tell people not to do risky things, but that really isn't very effective. And what you need to do is you need to cooperate with the business needs and help your company do what they need to do with a lowered risk, instead of just trying to stop them from doing what they need to do, which is not going to be effective. So the effectiveness of your risk management depends on how much support you have from management and how much the culture works with you. How much do people actually obey the rules? You know, how is their morale? Things like that. And so you have to customize your management program to fit into the company. So the culture is the big one. How do people feel about their job? How do they feel about management? How do they feel about security? Are they going to obey the rules, or are they just going to work around and break the rules? Then you consider the mission, the management structure and support. What kind of industry you have matters a lot, of course. Like I mentioned, Facebook has an official policy of move fast and break things. They don't care about security at all because they're not handling data that's very private. All the stuff they're handling is primarily public posts. So if they were to lose them or something, it wouldn't really matter. But someplace like a bank or a hospital would have to take a very different attitude toward security. And then you got market conditions and regulations, risk tolerance, and financial health, determining whether you want to take risky activities to try to bring in more revenue, or whether you want to be conservative and avoid risk because a security breach would really be bad for you. So if you do risk management correctly, then you will have less security incidents and they will do less harm, and people in your company will be aware of risks and they'll be thinking about risks when they're writing new software and making decisions and such. This is what you would like. You would like people to be aware of the security consequences of their decisions and try to avoid making unwise security decisions. But you can only do that if you are seen as a helpful force in their life instead of an irritating thing they have to do for compliance. So there's a lot of technologies involved in this. Access governance systems we'll talk more about, and access management systems, then anti-malware and antivirus, cloud access security brokers, which are how you limit who's doing what on your cloud devices. You can have application security testing tools, scanning your applications to see if they have vulnerabilities, and you can observe file activity and file integrity to see if you find suspicious things there. And then, of course, firewalls, which have gone through many generations, and the latest generation firewall, one is Palo Alto type, is really extremely intelligent. And it's not artificial intelligence, as far as I know, but it does understand things like Active Directory and groups and social media and games and all these categories that have meaning in the real world. It's gone way beyond just filtering things on ports and protocols. And so access governance, as separated from access management is just controlling what people do according to some rules, but access governance is controlling them according to your overarching policy. So it indicates a more tight integration with your policy and a better level of control. That's governance. Now, governance is complying with your policies, whereas management just means controlling it to get the job done. And so there's more technologies that help this. Forensic tools you use to examine machines for incident information about intrusions and abuse. Governance, risk, and compliance systems we'll talk about, software that helps you perform this governance activity. Intrusion detection and intrusion prevention look at network traffic and logs and determine if they see something suspicious, and then they either raise alerts or block traffic from certain sources. Your network access controls limit who can connect to your network. You can have phishing blocking software that detects suspicious emails and IMs coming in, or suspicious messages going out when somebody clicks on the link going to known phishing sites. Privileged access management limits what the administrator can do. And public key infrastructure is what manages the public keys which are used to identify servers and also sometimes client machines and sometimes people. Your SIEM systems, the market leader being Splunk, are the log aggregation systems where you send all the logs from all your devices to one point, and in that one point you can search and see if there are suspicious activities, and you can search the past to retrace the steps of attackers and find out what they've been doing. Single sign-on systems are everywhere. The most common one is Microsoft Active Directory, where you sign on to an Active Directory server, and then you have access to all different company servers, file servers and web servers and all these different servers. And as you connect to each server, it sends a token from you to say, I've already logged in today, here's my token to prove I'm still the same person. And if somebody can steal that token, they can imitate you, and that's a man-in-the-middle attack, and it's also called a pass-the-hash attack, which is a serious vulnerability of Microsoft Windows systems. And Microsoft has added more defenses in the latest versions of Windows, but it's still commonly used by pen testers successfully. And then there's application security testing tools. The static ones will do things like examine source code of an application. So governance, risk, and compliance is the strategy for managing your overall governance, a structured approach of aligning your IT with the business objectives and limiting the risk. So a sort of holistic, overall control of security. And we'll see there are some products designed just to do that. How do you steal the token? There's a lot of ways. You can steal it off the network. You can also steal it from an endpoint. One typical thing you do is you trick somebody into clicking on a link, and you put malware on their end device, and then you search that device for tokens. And if the domain administrator has ever logged in on that device, there will be a token left on it which they can steal. Redirect to ghost server. Well, I don't know what that means. You don't need to redirect the traffic the way this is usually done. So maybe I shouldn't have called it a man-in-the-middle attack. The way it's usually done is you take over an endpoint, you escalate to administrator on the endpoint, but there are a lot of ways to do that, and then you steal the stored password hashes off that endpoint. Because if anybody of a high privilege has ever logged in on that endpoint, it will save the password hash. And once you have that, you pass the hash, and that's accepted as the single sign-on token, so you can now log in with higher privileges on another server. Good. So spam filters block spam emails. Third-party risk management systems. I'm not quite sure how they work to somehow tell you if you have third-party risks. That's interesting. But user behavior analytics are things that attempt to see if your own employees are becoming disloyal. This really took a giant jump forward after Snowden and Manning. Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning. Both of these were world-shaking scandals where trusted people inside the U.S. military just leaked the secrets. And this made every chief CEO and CTO say, wait a minute, how do I know that one of my employees is not going to just take my stuff and dump it on WikiLeaks? How do you know that? How would you know if that happened? And so people sell you these systems that will try to look at what people are doing and notice if they're spending more time playing games at work or doing other suspicious things, and somehow warn you if their behavior has changed and they appear to be disloyal. I don't know how well that works, but the threat is certainly real. Unified threat management systems we'll talk about a little later. Just combines a lot of, basically modern firewall. Virtual private networks are ways to encrypt traffic so that your traffic cannot be easily sniffed by other people. A lot of people used to use VPNs at home, and the modern recommendation is you don't really need to bother. Now that everybody's using HTTPS, your traffic is already encrypted. But most corporations I know continue to use VPNs anyway. Vulnerability scanners will scan something like a website to see if they find any known vulnerabilities, and the same thing for web applications. Web filtering will block URLs that are known to be malicious and known malicious traffic. This was hurting some of my students in my other course. They were trying to run SQL map to perform SQL injection on a server, and if they had Norton installed, it would block that traffic because it looked malicious. See, how about the Microsoft employee that bilked Microsoft out of $10 million? I don't remember that one. Don't use VPNs in cyber cafes? Well, it won't hurt to use a VPN in a cyber cafe, but it's not as important as it used to be. The main point of using a VPN in a cafe was that if you were using unencrypted traffic, someone in the cafe could sniff your packets. But now that everything is pretty much HTTPS, that risk is pretty small. That's all. Yeah, and I remember the Microsoft employee. 10 million is a pretty small number, though. Those things happen pretty often. But if you have a link, put it up there. I'll take a look at it. All right, and then you got wireless access controls to limit who connects to your wireless network. He just got sentenced in 2020. Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that one. Anyway, and then there's external monitoring and intelligence services. You might have a managed service provider that monitors your network remotely, and you might have threat intelligence services you subscribe to that update the rules in your prevention devices with the latest known malicious URLs and such. That's threat intelligence. What tool would you use to sniff packets? Oh, you can use a variety of them. You can use Wireshark. There's also DriftNet and Responder and MITM proxy. There's a lot of different tools you use to perform man-in-the-middle attacks in cafes. But they're all a whole lot less useful than they used to be because there's not much unencrypted traffic. Anyway, here's some links coming up for the chat. Oh yeah, here's the one. I think I remember this one. The Microsoft employee that stole 10 million bucks in store credit. Yep. So he was an insider, and he found some way to like embezzle money from inside Microsoft. He stole gift cards. Yeah, I remember this one, which he sold for Bitcoin. Yeah, this is really just the tech version of somebody stealing products from the warehouse. And here's another one. Oh, the same one. Okay, good. Yeah, good. All right, good. That's a good example. And why do I not see the slides? Well, there they are. Okay. So here's the user behavior analytics tool, and that's the point. This is a process that looks at patterns of human behavior and tries to determine if your humans are doing suspicious things. So I say they've been selling pretty well, but I'm not sure I've seen any demonstration of how effective they are. And unified threat management is this thing now called the next generation firewall. This was all the rage about 8-10 years ago, before Google got hacked. Everybody would buy these single boxes and say, put this box on the edge of your network and you'll be fine. And then China hacked right through them and hacked everybody, and that kind of made people realize you can't trust these things as much as you thought. But they're still good. They block a whole lot of nasty stuff from coming in. It's just that that doesn't mean you can trust your internal network to be free of malware and attacks. It just means you've stopped some of the attacks, but some of them will go through. All right. Let's take a look at the cahoots. That looks like it's fitting on the screen well enough. And it's 163A1. There we go. Right, just going to be CNET 160. Okay. All right. That might be everyone that's coming. All right. All right. So which one ensures compliance with regulations? All right, that's it. GRC, governance. All right, which one will detect insider threats? All right, that's it. User behavior analytics. Let me just take a look at GRC. I know what's bothering me. I'm thinking of Gibson Research Corporation, which is a different GRC. But this one is, there we are, governance, risk, and compliance. Okay, good. Anyway, this one was user behavioral analytics, to see if your users are doing suspicious things. All right, how about suspicious network activity? All right, so that's intrusion detection system. I see the lag is pretty bad today. All right. And which one has passed the hash attacks? That's the single sign-on solutions. Okay. I'm thinking that's Judy. I'm going to guess it is. That might be a real name. All right, that's a real name. All right. All right, let's go back to here. Yeah, we still have time to continue. So, when you're purchasing stuff, If you have risk management, then you might be considering what risks you get and mitigate them. If you don't have a risk management functioning at your company, then people will just buy stuff that they see advertised, that salespeople talk them into, that they see at other companies, and so on. So good, thank you, Judy. And you know, that's not good for security. People are just buying stuff without considering security. Like I said, it would be better if you could get people in the habit of thinking about security. So to determine what the risk tolerance is at your company, what does your management think of risk? How can your organization absorb loss? Are you a regulated industry like banking or healthcare, where there are just legal requirements on what your security level must be? And what kind of risk assessments and risk treatments have you had in the past? Do you have a history of getting hacked and you're trying to improve, or have you never been hacked, so you think you're invulnerable? Typically, companies don't take hacking seriously until they get hacked a few times. All right. And then you consider your internal relationships. If your security is the no group, or all you do is tell people no all the time, then they will just ignore you and work around you, and then you lose all control. So what you want to do is become a business enabler. At the college, I was very surprised years ago when I wanted to do some things on the network, and they brought in a new IT director, and he would help me do things. If I told him I want to have some servers that are outside the campus firewall so my students can put honeypots on them and attract like malware attacks. Now, some people would tell me you can't do that, but he figured out a way to do that. You know, that's being a business enabler. If someone wants to do something that involves some risk, instead of just telling them no, you help them do that in a way that will not be too harmful, but will still let them do what they're doing. So you have to communicate with your stakeholders, and this is what makes politics so tough. Like if you look at everybody fighting about masks and COVID, there are just a lot of people with positions that want respect there. And if you just arbitrarily make a decision from authority figures, they will often not comply because they feel their position has not been respected. Aren't compliance groups inherently on the outs? Well, that's the issue. They used to be, but the point of this chapter is they shouldn't be. You should become better than that. You should help people understand that your security team is there to help you do your business and do it safely enough. And if you're just constantly irritating everybody, making them fill out useless forms, go to useless classes, then they hate you. And that is the ineffective kind of security team. A better security team is like a consultant that you would bring in to help you do something. That's the idea. And it's not easy, of course. Just like we're seeing, it's not easy for the city of San Francisco to make a decision about opening schools or wearing masks and please people, because a lot of people are just hard to please. So, you know, you need to explain to all the stakeholders, all the people you're affecting, what you're doing and how it will improve the organization, including their own jobs. Now, nobody wants the company to get hacked. So if you can convince them that your security measures are actually improving the company's security and preventing us all from getting hacked, then maybe you can get them on board. But if you just have a lot of irritating rules that make no sense, which I must say the most common thing that occurs to me is password rules. Everybody I work for has stupid password rules that make no sense, that just waste your time. Like one huge one is forcing you to change your password every 30 or 90 days. The government recommended that for years, and about 2 years ago they rescinded that, and they said, you know, we've discovered that all that does is irritate people and accomplish nothing. But most companies I'm working for have not got the memo yet, and they're still forcing you to do that. Anyway, so you try to be transparent about what you're doing and what good it is, but there is some information, of course, that the security team knows that you do want to keep confidential, like the exact details of what technologies you're using to protect the company. So there's usually security awareness training. Kevin Mitnick is a leader in this field. He gives these sort of magic shows showing off hacking tricks, and hopefully he's very popular. People really like it. It's a fun show. And that's one consideration, that it's not boring. So risk awareness, you give to senior personnel so that they know that their decisions affect the risk, that there is a management program, and that there is a process and technique that they can use to consult with the risk management team and make better decisions. And so you basically act as a consultant within your organization. When somebody wants to do something like launch a new product or open a new location or install some new server, they could call the risk team to come in as a consultant while they're deciding what to do and help guide them into the best way to do it, which is only possible if they trust you to actually help them and not waste their time on nonsense. So you need to listen to people, you need to understand the business and understand what they're trying to accomplish and help them accomplish it. And this, by the way, is the same thing you have to do to be a sales engineer, which is a job in these tech talks people have been talking about. If you want to sell something to a customer, you have to listen. I remember when I got certified in fiber optics, this was often an issue. The customer does not even understand how the technology works, so they don't even understand what the options are. You have to educate them. You have to find out what they need, and then you have to explain to them what they could buy that would help them accomplish that. And this is often the case in technology. And it's also true here. So there are frameworks that have rules to guide you. The ISO has the international framework specifying the information security management system and risk management and risk assessment techniques and many other things if you're going to be consistent with the international standard. There are U.S. government standards. For federal agencies, you got the NIST 800 specifying how to do it. Then there's the COBIT standard, the RIMS model, facilitated risk awareness process. There's a lot of these standards, and your company can choose to match one or more of these standards, and then they can advertise to everybody they match this standard, and they will naturally choose a standard that their partners and customers want, and then their customers will understand what level of security they have. So each one of these frameworks, there's a scope, which is what part of your company is going to comply. And then you have objectives you're trying to accomplish, and a policy is the instructions of what to do at your company. You have some ability. You've decided how much risk you want to accept, and then you determine roles and responsibilities of people involved in the risk management team. And then you have a life cycle, like everything, where you determine policies, you get it down to standards and procedures where people do things. Then you measure assessments to see if people are obeying your policy and if your policy is in fact accomplishing your goal. And then you modify your policies at the top in response to whatever deficiencies there are in your assessment, and you have a continuously improving loop. That's the life cycle. And you document everything, and you have managers that review this stuff. So here's what the commercial GRC systems are. Here's some of them. RSA makes one, Logic, Manager, and Risk Connect, that target different sizes and sectors of business. And they will install this stuff, $14,000 a year just for the software. This is the software that will help manage this governance, risk, and compliance system, which affects everything you do. I remember when I worked at, many years ago, at an MS-DOS-based database at a company, I created something like this. I didn't have these names yet, but we had 150 cases, and it was getting confusing, and I made a management system that would control all the activity of hundreds of people working on all these cases, and the boss started using it to analyze how many hours of effort it took to solve the cases, and therefore predict the prices for new customers. He could predict from that how much it would cost for a case that came in, and that's the sort of thing that goes on here. That wasn't directly about security, but it was the same kind of thing, organizing all your processes with a computer-aided model. So you use this platform to manage your policies, and this is the idea. If it integrates into the culture to where people actually find this thing useful, that's the most important consideration. At City College, they've been, for the last 8 or 10 years, they've been trying to set one up like this, and so far it's just very confusing to everybody. But anyway, there's a giant database and several commercial products, and we have to put in all the student grades and all kinds of other things in there to supposedly keep track of how we're doing and how we're improving our courses. And it is so far 100% just meaningless filling out of forms that serve no purpose. But supposedly after enough decades, it can eventually mutate into something that actually serves some purpose. That's what my sister tells me. Anyway, so your risk management program might only apply to part of the business, or the whole business. And you have internal environments that affect how it's going to work, like your organizational goals, your strategies, how much money you have, your existing practices and maturity, and the relationships and communications and culture, which is, the big one. Do the different parts of your company really trust each other and work together, or do they sort of undo each other's work and hide things from each other and lie to each other? That makes a big difference. That's internal issues. And then there's external issues like market conditions, laws and regulations, external stakeholders like your customers and suppliers, external threats and geopolitical factors. All these things will affect the risks coming from the outside and the success of your internal risk management program. And so you can do gap analysis. You can figure out what you want. Like, we want everybody to be using two-factor authentication. And your gap would be how many people are not, and who are they and why. You might find that your employees are using it, but your suppliers are not, and your business partners are not, something like that. So you make a gap, and then you figure out how to close the gap, or whether it's worth closing the gap. Another one is you might have a change control process. Maybe right now you just have a log of changes that were made and a record of emails getting management approval. I want to change something on the network. You get approval, you do it. They just log that. Well, that's something, but that's not a very good process. What you ought to have is a formal way to request a change, then a change advisory board that actually considers what the consequences of that change would be, with several people with roles and responsibilities, and then a complete record of what they considered and whether the change was approved. That's a better, more secure change management process. So now nobody is perfect in this business. In my last class, there were students, the web security class, people are saying, this is just an overwhelming amount of information. And it always is. Nobody knows it all. So you have to reach out to other people and get help. So there's always something you don't know that much. And so there's a lot of places to go to get help. You can go to security groups. You can go to people like ISC Squared, ISACA, and ISA are societies. And here's a bunch of others like Cloud Security Alliance. InfraGard is the public-private partnership between business and the FBI. There's a group for privacy professionals. And there's a lot of published practices and a lot of sources of news. Risky Biz is a very highly rated podcast for anybody in this business. It's by just the kind of people that have this certification we're talking about. Managers talking about the products they buy, the risks they run, how they handle it. Pulse Security Weekly is another one. And then there's a lot of websites like Dark Reading and such. These are very useful. Often the ads are also very interesting, not just the official content. The products that are being advertised are often important. And then there's reports from all these research organizations. Verizon has a very notable security report, I think, annually. And these consulting companies also have reports of what they've found. And there are advisory services, the most famous one being Gartner, that has this Gartner quadrant, where they rate companies by completeness of vision and ability to execute. And they will take companies like firewall companies and put them up there on their rating of, is this the best firewall company or not? And there are many other people. They charge for these services, but it's considered quite valuable in determining whether to invest in a company, whether you want to partner with them, whether you want to standardize on their equipment or not, whether that company is going to survive and thrive or whether they're going to get washed out. T-Mobile might want to look at Verizon's reports. Yeah, that's right. And then there's consulting firms. You can hire consultants to come in and help clean things up for you, and of course take training and books. These are all things, and everybody in this business has to keep on learning forever. And if you get this certification for this class, CISM, you have to have continuing education, and that's true of all the security certs that I know of. Because if all you know is stuff from like 5 or 10 years ago, you're almost useless. And here's a cybersecurity canon from Palo Alto Networks, just listing a whole bunch of good books. There's various of these out there. And there's many conferences you can go to, like RSA is coming up in San Francisco. In fact, I've got some tips about that. Black Hat and DEF CON are big ones in Vegas, and there's many other conferences. In fact, let me stop and say a word about RSA, because if you go to my 125 page, now if you go to my home page, RSA is coming up in San Francisco. You might want to go. It's worth extra credit if you go, although I think it might be outside the semester. Here it is in June. Yeah, it's probably outside the semester. But there's a college day when you can go for free with a college ID card. So you might want to do that. And in addition, if you want to go to the whole conference for free, you can become a volunteer. And they told me to only tell that to my students, so I didn't put it right on my home page. I put it at the bottom of the 125 page. I'll put it in the chat when it loads here. All right, there it is, RSA 2022 volunteers. You can contact these people and volunteer to be a room monitor or something at RSA, room host or something. And if you do that, then you get like free admission to more of the conference. So you might want to check that out. RSA is a business conference, the business of security. It is pretty frustrating for highly technical people like me. I would rather be at like a security B-sides, because RSA has a lot of marketing and stuff. But if you're interested in the business side, it's very useful. And some people go there just to get swag. There's a huge display booths of people handing out free stuff, and you can just fill shopping bags with free giveaways. And then I mentioned there are information sources, quite a few of them, like IBM X-Force and many others. These are online feeds of recent important security information. Often machine readable, so you can feed it right into your SIEM or your IDS, and it will then include that information in analyzing the traffic and logs that you're seeing. So it'll tell you that this traffic is going to a known malicious IP address or domain name, for example. All right, let's take a look at a Kahoot. Which should be 3A2, okay? I think it's the streaming that makes my machine so slow. It always does slow things down quite a bit. 160, 3A2. There it is. It's fast enough, but it's definitely much slower when I'm streaming. After FireEye got hacked, their stock went up. Well, I don't know about that. I would assume that would not be because of them getting hacked, but because of something else, like a new product or a merger or something. It's certainly true, by the way, that getting hacked is not fatal. Doesn't mean that everybody will hate you. Pretty much everybody gets hacked these days, even the big name companies. So it's not like you can't recover from being hacked. But it's not good. You'd rather not be hacked, but it's very far from the case that being hacked means nobody will trust you again. It's just kind of business as usual that you get hacked and you have to respond to it. Wasn't FireEye scathed by that recent supply chain hack? I think FireEye discovered that recent supply chain hack. The, I forget the name of it. This product that everybody had installed, a remote control product, SolarWinds. FireEye is the company that found it. So they got a lot of credit from that. They might have been a victim, but they were the one that actually figured out how it was happening. So. Yeah, disclosed and analyzed it, yeah. Yes, there's often no other option. You know, I remember when TJ Maxx got hacked, I thought I'd probably rather shop there than somewhere else because they've actually had to improve their security now. Other people have not been hacked and they probably aren't securing anything yet. All right, looks like I got some people. This is probably all that's coming. So what does Kevin Metnick provide? All right, that's security awareness training. That's what he does. I'm going to stop the streaming and restart it to see if I can bring that lag down because it's pretty strange. I'll be back in just a few seconds. All right. All right, I think could not access the channel. All right, let's try it now. Okay, I think it's going now. Okay, let's see if this is any better. Okay, I see it moving up there. I think the lag is down. The lag has been really bad to where the cahoots are kind of strange. Let's see if it works better now. All right, so what is the primary purpose of risk management? This is much better. The lag is only about 3 seconds now. All right. Here's the point. It's not to stop risky activities. It's to improve the business. You're to help the business succeed, sell more product, make more money. You're not just blocking risky activities. You're helping the business succeed. That's the fundamental issue here. If you're just trying to stop risky activities, then you are the obstacle everybody hates. Yes, it will show the questions and answers on your endpoint in your browser, going to Kahoot. And it should show them in your browser, in your browser at Kahoot. Are other people seeing it in your browser? Maybe I don't have the projection turned on for this one. Oh, okay, I guess I must have forgot to turn on the projection. I can't change it now, but I'll check it next time. All right. Well, I think there's only one more of these. All right. Oh, 2 more of these. Okay, what process requires relationships of trust? Yep, consulting requires trust. Yeah, it sounds like there's some inconsistency in what students are seeing. This is another reason why I make this thing extra credit, because it's often unfair in various ways. So if you're not getting a fair chance to win the Kahoot, you're not really losing any points that matter, for what that's worth. Anyway. All right, and what's the most important consideration when choosing a GRC program? That's it. It has to fit into your culture or nobody will comply and you won't accomplish anything. All right. So let's see what the winners are, even though the system is not perfect. That's Judy again. Good. All right. Jay Hovani. And Mitch Sands has won twice. Good. All right.